And Amy is going to talk to you about interim alternative educational setting.
Thank you. So interim alternative educational setting, or also known as IAES, which is actually harder to say than interim alternative educational setting, is something that is a big deal in my world, in the special education discipline data world, and not such a big deal in most other people's worlds. But this is, it is important, and this is something that we've collected separately outside of Infinite Campus over the last few years. Beginning this year, we will be collecting it from the Safe Schools tab, or the Safe Schools report. So because of that, you have to have IAES as a behavior resolution within the Safe Schools reporting, within your behavior tab. So, and we've done checks, kind of random checks, and this is something that maybe half the districts have done. It only has to be done at the district level, but it is important that it does get done. We've sent out information both through me and through Wendy Newton about how to put that in. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or Wendy, and we'll be happy to help you with that. And we'll cover that in here as well. So IAES is not, the word alternative makes people think that you're putting students in an alternative school, and it's not. Well, it could be, but it's not necessarily. It is a setting in which a student was removed outside of the ARC. It's not a change of setting according to the ARC. The student was removed in an emergency situation. So, and the student, it's only for students with special, or with IEPs. And the student can be placed in that setting for no more than 45 days, 45 school days. So this allows students to consider or continue receiving educational services, participate in the general education curriculum, and progress toward meeting the goals set out in the student's IEP. It's for special education students only. It's a temporary setting, like I said, and it's if students are removed in an emergency situation because of drugs, weapons, or serious bodily injury. Those are the only 3 times this is used, and it has to be an emergency situation that's done before, they need to do it immediately before an ARC can get together and meet. IAES can take 2 forms. It'll either be done by school personnel, like the principal, or it can be done by a hearing officer, a KDE appointed hearing officer. We have very few of those, and honestly, across the board, we have less than 50 IAES cases annually statewide. Somewhere between 30 and 50 typically is what we have. So like I said, it's not a big deal to most people, but it needs to be reported properly so that we can report it to the federal government properly. And just so everyone, I want to explain it so everyone understands what it means. This might be more information than you need, but it is important for people to understand it. School personnel order the removal of the student, and then the ARC is going to meet and determine where the student goes. So the school personnel says, we're going to take him out of school. And he can be removed for, you know, a certain number of days until the ARC gets a chance to meet. He can be, have out-of-school suspension or whatever is determined. But the ARC is responsible for determining the interim alternative educational setting. So again, and I've said this many times already, universal or unilateral removals are not done by the ARC. They're done, the removal itself is done by the school personnel. The decision where to put the student and for how long is done by the ARC, is created by the ARC. Removal by a hearing officer is the same thing, except an impartial hearing officer is the one that issued the removal of the student. And we sometimes have none of those in a school year, so it's very rare. So the state resolutions, these are the state resolutions that exist, and you notice IAES, there are 2 of those down at the bottom there. IAES 1 should be unilateral removal by school personnel, and IAES 2 should be removal by hearing officer. Those are for special education use only. And we will be reporting those based on what is in the Safe Schools report. So if you've already had some of these, you probably need to go back and look at those and get them put into your system. So setting this up, you'd set it up just like you would any resolution, but I feel like I need to go over it. When I showed this to my special education directors, and I've done this twice now, they can look at me like I'm crazy because they're not the ones that put these in the system. But I want to show them so that they can make sure they take it back to the school and give it to the appropriate person, or to the district, give it to the appropriate person to put it in. So first thing you want to do is see if it's in there. See if you have a local resolution type that's mapped to IAES. And you may, and if you do, then you're done. If you don't, you need to put it in. So there will be 2, like I said, removal by school personnel and removal by hearing officer. So these are just the steps to put it in if it's not in your database. You're gonna create a new resolution type, enter the appropriate information. Start date is just gonna be the date that's created. I need to go back here for a second. Okay. The category is whatever you determine that it should be at the district level. And don't forget to reference the behavior data standards as you're doing this, just to make sure you're following the data standards. Wendy and I have worked very closely together on this. And so we want to make sure that what I do agrees with what she does and vice versa. So when you create an event for the student, it should be either drug, weapon, or injury for the reason for the event type. And you're going to select one of those from the drop-down. So these are the law violations that go along with those. IAES for drug, IAES for weapon, and IAES for injury. Notice they all say SPED only. We've also seen several instances in the past couple of years where students have IAES as a resolution and they're not special ed. So you probably want to check that as well when you're looking at your Safe Schools data at the end of the year. Make sure that if you have IAES, that it is for students who have IEPs. And then you're just going to select the event or save the event, add the participant, add the resolution detail, and select if it's which type of IAES it is, unilateral removal or removal by hearing officer. And then you're just going to complete it, putting in all the information you need to. Select the indicator for the student, and then save the resolution. So it's really simple. It's things that probably those who work in the behavior tab do regularly, but I can't stress how important it is that this get put in so that we can accurately report it. Because if we report that we don't have any, that's really gonna raise red flags for the federal government when they, are wondering why we can't get our data right. So it's extremely important that it be done.
So if someone who is trying to enter the data is not seeing that option there, they need to work with the system administrator to get the code in. They may not have tool rights to do that themselves.
Exactly. So,
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Amy while she's still here with us? Got about 5 minutes before the next presenter comes up. Any questions online? Okay.
that was quick.
Thank you.